And we start with a Fox News alert on a new challenge for Congress after it gave President Trump his biggest legislative victory to date with the passage of tax reform. Good morning to you. I'm John Scott.
Hi to you, John, and to all of you. I'm Leah Gabriel, and we are live on Capitol Hill, where the House GOP just unveiled a new stripped-down spending bill to prevent a government shutdown. This on the heels of passing the first comprehensive tax overhaul in decades. President Trump calling it, quote, a big, beautiful tax cut for the American people, and saying it will boost the economy and the job market.
I guess it's very simple when you think you haven't heard this expression, but we are making America great again. You haven't heard that, have you? I want to have them get up and get the glamour and the glory.
Chief White House correspondent John Roberts is live on the North Lawn. John, good to see you.
Leah, good to see you as well, and good morning to you. This is probably the biggest moment of the Trump presidency. It took him 11 months to the day to get to this point, but there was no end of celebration in the South Lawn of the White House yesterday. For the president, this was the big promise that he made during the campaign. This was his signature issue, and he finally brought it home. A promise made and a promise kept. Sometimes a rare thing in Washington. The president said that he believes that all things good will flow out of this. It's going to be a real boost to the economy, the president said, tweeting this morning, quote, the massive tax cuts, which the fake news media is desperate to write badly about so as to please their Democrat bosses, will soon be kicking in and will speak for themselves. Companies are already making big payments to workers. Dems want to raise taxes, hate those big cuts. The president says that the corporate tax was the biggest aspect of the deal. He read the announcement from AT&T yesterday that it's going to invest $1 billion here in the United States and give all 200,000 of its employees a $1,000 bonus, and predicted that what AT&T did is just the tip of the iceberg. Listen.
We're going to see something that's going to be very special. We're bringing the entrepreneur back into this country. We're getting rid of all the knots and all the ties, and we're going to you're going to see what happens. And ultimately, what does it mean? It means jobs.
Big celebration on the White House South Lawn yesterday, but then right back to work because the president's got to get a spending bill to keep the government open. The bill that is emerging out of the Rules Committee in the House would keep the government funded through the 19th of January, 4 weeks this time instead of the regular 2 weeks. What's unclear at this point is whether or not it will pass. It does include waivers to cuts in entitlements to pay for tax reform. But in the Senate, they need 9 Democrats to sign on to this. And we're not sure at this point if they're going to get it. The president tweeting out this morning, quote, House Democrats want to shut down for the holidays in order to distract from the very popular just passed tax cuts. House Republicans don't let this happen. Pass the CR continuing resolution today and keep our government open. Short time ago here in the driveway outside the West Wing, Sarah Huckabee Sanders, the press secretary, was asked about it. Here's what she said.
We have maintained our position all along as we want a clean bill, and that's what we hope happens, and we hope it happens soon because we know all of you guys and all of Congress and everybody else is ready to make sure that the government is fully funded and functional and go home and celebrate Christmas.
The White House is pretty optimistic that it will get a continuing resolution to continue to fund the government. They're not sure, though, whether or not they're going to get these waivers. The net effect of not getting the waivers would be that the president would wait until the first week of January to sign the tax reform bill. But, Lee, I got to say the president's feeling good about this, so good, in fact, that we're hearing rumors of a possible press conference today. I think they're still working on whether or not that's going to happen. They haven't yet made the decision, but we should find out soon whether or not it will happen. Leah?
All right. Well, after that big, beautiful tax reform, hopefully there will not be a shutdown. John Roberts, thank you.
Thank you.
We made a promise to the American people that we would do this if they gave us this opportunity. We made a promise that if elected, this is what we would do. We're keeping our promise. I, as Speaker of the House, all the Senate Republicans, all the House Republicans, and President-elect Donald Trump, President-candidate Donald Trump, we told the American people, this is what you do if you elect us. This is what we are going to do. And guess what, Martha? We just did it.
Well, that is House Speaker Paul Ryan patting his GOP on the back for keeping its word on tax reform. But will that translate into victory in the 2018 midterms? Joining us now, Senator John Thune, a Republican from South Dakota, and the Senate GOP conference chairman. We listened to Chuck Schumer earlier today saying the Republicans will rue the day that they passed this tax bill. What do you have to say to the Senate Minority Leader?
Well, good morning, John. And I think that the Democrats are really missing the boat on this. And it comes down to a fundamental difference in the way that they view this issue and the way that we view this issue. In the Democrats' world, the American people send their money to Washington, D.C., and bureaucrats here in Washington get to decide how to spend it. In the real world, and what way we believe it ought to work, we send the money back or allow the American people to keep their money and spend it their own way. And so this is going to be a decision for the American people next November, obviously. And the Democrats think that they have the upper hand here. But I think when the American people realize that this means more money in their pocket and that their paychecks are going to be up and their taxes are going to be down, that they're going to have a very different conclusion than what the Democrats here in Washington have.
Yeah, take it down to the micro level for us. You represent South Dakota. What does this mean for the folks of South Dakota?
Well, look, in South Dakota, you know, average income $55,000 a year. This is a big deal. And if you look at it in real terms, and a couple of examples, if you're a single parent with one child, $41,000 a year, you get a 73% tax cut over what you're paying under current law. Family of four with combined annual income of $73,000 a year gets a tax cut of a little over $2,000, which represents almost 60% reduction over what they're paying under current law. That's the real world impact of this. That's what it means to the people of South Dakota and the people across this country. And when they look at this issue, I think they see it very differently than the Democrats in Washington, D.C. see it.
But our Fox polls taken just before the House and the Senate voted on this thing indicated that only about 30% of Americans were in favor of that. Do you think it's because they don't understand it, or they really don't like what's in this bill?
I think they'll like it when they see it and when they get it. And when sometime early next year, when they get that paycheck and they look at the deductions and the payroll, the withholding on that, and they see that they're actually getting more money in their pocket, I think they're going to have a very different view of this. And frankly, there's been a lot of misinformation put out there by Democrats, probably helped a little bit by the way the media has presented this. But at the end of the day, the proof really is in the paycheck. They are going to be able to see in a very real way the difference that Republican majority in the House and the Senate and a Republican president has made in their daily economic lives. And I think ultimately that'll be the final litmus test in how they view this legislation. And that what they'll find out, too, John, is that we delivered on the commitment that we made, the promise we made to them, and that is that we were going to allow them to keep more of their own money in their pocket and to make decisions for themselves and their families. And I think that's consistent with what Republicans who campaigned last fall were saying all along. We're going to cut taxes, we're going to reform the tax code, make our businesses more competitive, get our economy growing at a faster rate and creating better paying jobs and bigger paychecks and higher wages for American workers.
The ink is barely dry on this bill, and it already seems to be having some effect. What do you have to say to some of those companies that are announcing, bonuses and stock buybacks and things like that?
Sure, we're starting to see things like that. I think you'll see more of that. I've talked with a number of CEOs and businesses across this country. What you saw AT&T do, what you saw Comcast do, paying out bonuses, looking at ways to expand and hire more workers. And clearly, when you have a competitive labor market and you've got a growing economy, it means that wages are going to go up. It's going to, businesses are going to have to pay their employees more. And that's the desired effect of what we're doing with this tax reform legislation that the president is going to sign into law. So we're encouraged. We feel really good about the product, the work that was done, and we think the effects of it are going to be long-lasting in a way that's very beneficial not only to American families in terms of their own financial and economic standing, but also America's place in the world. We're going to become more globally competitive. This is a message to the world that America is on the stage and intends to lead again in the 21st century.
The chair of the Republican conference in the U.S. Senate, Senator John Thune, South Dakota. Thank you, sir.
Thanks, John. Yep, nice to be with you.
Thank you.
Deputy FBI Director Andrew McCabe and demoted Justice Department official Bruce Ohr both talking behind closed doors today on Capitol Hill. More on what answers lawmakers are looking for from both men. Plus, monuments to two big Confederate names come down to cheers in Tennessee, a move the mayor says is long overdue there.
History is being made in Memphis tonight. These statues no longer represent who we are as a modern, diverse city with momentum.
Well, right now, 2 statues honoring Confederate icons have been taken down in Memphis. The statues of General Nathan Bedford Forrest and Confederate President Jefferson Davis removed last night from 2 parks after the city sold the land to a private entity. People at the scene cheered as those statues were hauled away. The city's mayor says the monuments no longer represent who the people of Memphis are.
A pair of key witnesses in the Russia investigation are testifying behind closed doors on Capitol Hill. Deputy FBI Director Andrew McCabe is back in front of lawmakers after delivering what some of them are calling conflicting testimony. While Bruce Ohr, who was demoted at the Justice Department, is answering questions about his contacts with the company behind the anti-Trump dossier. That's something that Congressman Ron DeSantis says could reflect poorly on the special counsel investigation.
You got one of the highest ranking officials in the Obama Justice Department meeting with opposition people against a rival presidential candidate. I think it casts an enormous cloud over what Mueller is now doing. And it's not necessarily Mueller's fault. It's just the fact that this thing was not handled very well. And I don't know to this day whether there was really any hard evidence to have been investigating any type of Trump-Russia collusion. They've been doing it for a year and a half and still no evidence of collusion.
Well, joining me now is Josh Kraushaar, politics editor for the National Journal. Nice to see you, Josh.
Good to be here.
So, we're hearing so much frustration expressed from lawmakers. What are the big questions, and what do you expect them to get answered today?
Well, look, the big question is whether there was a conflict of interest, whether there was rampant partisanship at the FBI. And look, there's a political reason for why congressional Republicans, House Republicans in particular, are being so aggressive about the conduct at the FBI. They want to portray this as sort of a partisan witch hunt. And certainly some key employees at the FBI have helped the House Republican case. Peter Strzok, we've heard a lot about. Andrew McCabe, the deputy director, his wife was a Democratic candidate in the Virginia state legislature. So there's a lot of strands that Republicans have used to attack the FBI's credibility. And it's had a political impact when you look at the latest national polling. The FBI used to be an institution that Republicans viewed extremely favorably. Recent NBC Wall Street Journal poll showed among Republicans, the favorability rating of the FBI among Republicans is significantly down. Bob Mueller was a Republican former attorney general, and his approval ratings among Republicans also down in the wake of these Republican criticisms.
Well, of course, having closed hearings eliminates a lot of the grandstanding that you sometimes see on the Hill when things like this take place. But I want to ask you about this. One of the big issues that lawmakers are very frustrated about is the timing and some of the answers that Andrew McCabe was giving. Specifically, the timing of when he found out that the Steele dossier was funded by the Clinton campaign and the DNC. He said he couldn't recall. Do you think that lawmakers are going to be able to drill down on that and get some real answers?
They already have. He had a 7-hour hearing in front of the House Intelligence Committee on Tuesday, and there were some inconsistencies that Republicans said they found. I mean, a lot of it isn't just that, but it's also a question of whether the facts in the dossier were accurate and whether he could confirm any of the details that have been since leaked to the media, and that was a big question at that hearing as well. So there are a lot of questions FBI leaders are going to have to ask, but this is also about politics, and Republicans are trying to raise questions indirectly towards Bob Mueller's investigation, and if it does get closer to the Trump White House, they want to raise questions about the FBI's credibility.
Let's talk about Bruce Ohr. You mentioned him. What are the big questions that lawmakers will be trying to get answered from Bruce Ohr?
Well, he's someone who was demoted for having a role in the composition of the dossier, and I think the question of what facts are true and what facts aren't. There's been a lot of smoke. There's been a lot of allegations in the dossier that's since leaked. But a lot of Republicans want to get to the bottom of what is accurate and what wasn't, and how they compiled a lot of that information. And since Ohr was demoted, I think a lot of details about his staffing circumstance and his role at the FBI is going to be coming into question as well.
Yeah, you mentioned that politics is a part of this, but it seems as though there are some real questions to be answered here. I mean, don't you think that there's a lot of value to come from this oversight from Congress when there are questions not just within Congress but also to the American people about the credibility of the FBI as this investigation is going on?
Absolutely, and the proof is ultimately in the pudding. The investigations, the questioning that you're seeing from Republicans, hopefully lead to answers and hopefully lead to the public having a greater understanding of what was going on at the FBI at the time. But, you know, look, I remember the 2016 presidential campaign. It was Democrats who were accusing the FBI of being politically biased. It was the Democratic Party that thought the New York field office of the FBI was trying to push the race against, or push the race for Donald Trump and against Hillary Clinton. So whenever you deal with a high-stakes investigation like this, politics is inevitably a part of it.
Yeah, you know, it certainly is. And one of the things that I want to bring up is that a number of lawmakers are calling for Andrew McCabe to be fired. Congressman Gowdy predicted that he actually will be. What do you think?
He certainly doesn't have a lot of political capital left at the FBI, and Trey Gowdy seemed to be pretty confident that he may be leaving in short order. That would not surprise me, but we've heard nothing official on what McCabe's future circumstances may be.
All right. Well, we will be certainly hoping to hear more about what is happening today. And thank you for joining us, Josh.
Thanks for having me.
Some new information now on a deadly car accident involving tennis star Venus Williams. What investigators are saying about the possibility of charges in that case. Plus, this year we have seen tax reform pass the Congress, a record rally on Wall Street, and major strides against ISIS. But the mainstream media generally is focused on negative stories for this president. Howie Kurtz joins us on why it seems like the media might be coming around to giving this president his due. Tennis star Venus Williams will not face charges in connection with a deadly car accident earlier this year. Police say surveillance video from the June accident shows Williams stop in an intersection to avoid a collision with a car cutting in front of her when another car slams into hers. A passenger in that second car died from his injuries. Police initially found Williams at fault, but now say the video shows she did not violate any traffic laws. Investigators also cleared the second driver of any charges. The family of the deceased man, however, has filed a civil suit against Williams.
President Trump scoring a major victory with the passage of tax reform, but it's hardly the first success of his administration. My next guest says the mainstream media may finally be ready to recognize the president's accomplishments. He writes, quote, "The narrative is changing a bit. While Trump remains a quite unpopular president, at least according to the polls, the media are reluctantly starting to acknowledge that his presidency is having a significant impact." Joining me now is the author of that article, Howard Kurtz. He's also a Fox News media analyst. Nice to see you, Howie.
Hi there. Good morning.
So Gary Varvel writes in USA Today, "It's time for us to give him a fair shake." You say it was actually taxes, and as you put it, the moment has arrived. Explain.
Yeah, there's a reason I put "Hell freezes over" as the headline on that column on the Fox website. Because for a year now, as you know, as everybody knows, the dominant media narrative has been this president can't get anything accomplished, he's in over his head, doesn't understand government, doesn't know what he's doing. And yet, that's now that the big tax bill has passed, and it's also got things in there like repealing of the individual mandate for Obamacare, there's starting to be a bit of a grudging reassessment and a grudging granting of credit by some mainstream media outlets that, look, he's gotten a dozen circuit court judges approved, as well as Neil Gorsuch. He has slashed regulations. The stock market is booming. The president doesn't get all the credit when the stock market rises or falls. But I guarantee you, the stock market was down 5,000 points instead of up 5,000 points in this first year. There'd be a lot more stories on it.
Well, that is certainly true. You know, as you mentioned, there are so many accomplishments that we're not hearing. You know, he's rolled back more than 860 President Obama-era regulations. The economy we just saw grew at 3.2% last quarter. 1.7 million jobs added. The Gorsuch confirmation, just to name a few, in addition to the ones that you just named. But you say that this tax bill basically puts an end to the verdict that President Trump doesn't know how to work the Hill. Can that be partly attributed to him learning over the past year, though?
I think so. I mean, clearly there was a spectacular failure on the repeal and replace of Obamacare. He tried 3 times, couldn't get it through Congress. And, you know, every new president comes in, particularly one who's never been in government before, and has to learn these sort of arcane compromises and processes that you have to go through. Now, it's true this, a lot of people don't like the provisions of this tax bill. It's controversial. And it's also true that it was pushed through by Republicans on a party line vote. But nevertheless, I mean, so was Obamacare, if you go back to when the Democrats ran Washington. Nevertheless, I think it does show the president and his team learning how to do things. And, the media, have been so distracted by many of the fights that the president has picked, including the Twitter feuds and so forth, that sometimes I think some of these accomplishments have been overshadowed, but now are starting to get a little bit of credit for.
Well, speaking of the fights and just the contentious relationship, the president has not always been, particularly kind to the media as well. He's called media fake news, journalists fake news. At the beginning of the administration, we didn't even know if cameras were going to be allowed into those White House briefings. So I guess my question is, has Trump changed also? Has the president changed? Will he be changing in his behavior towards the media as well, do you think?
I don't see any sign of that. I mean, just in the last couple of days, while he's celebrating this big victory, he's taken after fake news shows, hate shows. He feels like the media will not give him a break, and he has remained on the offensive. And by the way, this includes many conservative commentators who used to be never Trumpers. He doesn't have much patience for them either. But there's starting to be a reassessment there, too. National Review, which ran a big never Trump issue during the campaign, saying, yes, the president, in fact, he's made mistakes, but he's had a pretty good first year. So it's fascinating to me. I don't know whether this is just a blip and the warfare will resume after the first of the year, but starting to see a change in the tone, at least, of the coverage of this president.
All right. Well, at least a brief change in the tone. We will see how it goes moving forward. Thank you, Howie. Nice to see you.
Same here.
The ink on the tax reform bill is barely dry, and party is already over for congressional Republicans. Now begins the scramble to avert a looming government shutdown. The latest on the negotiations playing out right now. Plus, police in Australia releasing new details about the driver who they say deliberately plowed into a crowd of people.
He's a 32-year-old Australian citizen of Afghan descent. He is a person who is known to Victoria Police. He has historical assault matters.
Police in Australia say that there is no evidence right now to suggest that the car that plowed into a crowd of people, injuring 19 this morning in Melbourne, was tied to terrorism.
We don't, at this time, have any evidence or any intelligence to indicate there's a connection with terrorism. And I just want to reiterate that. At this time, we don't have any evidence or intelligence to indicate a connection with terrorism. Having said that, however, we continue to support this investigation with our Counter-Terrorism Command to ensure that there isn't that connection and that there is no ongoing threat.
Well, this comes as we learn new information about the man behind the wheel. Jonathan Hunt is live in Los Angeles. Jonathan, what do we know right now?
Well, Leah, we certainly know this was terrifying, but not terrorism, according to police in Melbourne. The streets outside the city's iconic Flinders Street railway station were packed with Christmas shoppers late Thursday afternoon local time when a white Suzuki SUV ran a red light and sped up, slamming into pedestrians. 19 people injured, 4 listed in critical condition, among them a young child. Now, the driver is a 32-year-old Australian citizen of Afghan descent. He was also injured and was arrested at the scene. Police say there isn't a connection to terrorism and there is no ongoing threat. They said the driver is on a, quote, mental health plan and receiving treatment for mental illness. Local officials expressed horror at the attack.
This is horrific, it's evil, but we are not defined by these sorts of incidents. I'm confident that we will go about our business and we will celebrate Christmas.
There have, of course, been several similar incidents around the world directly related to terrorism. In October, a man drove a truck down a New York City bike path, killing 8 people. London has seen 2 similar attacks this year, both linked to Islamic extremism. In April, 5 people were killed on a shopping street in Stockholm, Sweden. And last December, 12 people died in a vehicle attack on a Christmas market in Berlin, Germany. The deadliest of all these attacks came in July 2016, when a man drove a huge truck into a crowd in Nice, France, killing 86 people. As you can imagine, Leah, police forces across America and around the world are on alert for more of these kind of attacks as we go through the holiday season. Leah?
And they certainly have to be, since it is the terrorist MO these days. Jonathan Hunt, thank you.
Yep.
Just in on efforts to avert a government shutdown tomorrow at midnight, and we are live on Capitol Hill, awaiting the House vote on the GOP's stripped-down spending bill, with the White House keeping close eye on the process.
This White House is committed to keeping the government open. It'd be a shame if the Democrats forced a shutdown of the government in the 11th hour, trying to negotiate something, I would say, that would be irresponsible, because we want to make sure that we fund the military and other obligations and commitments. But this president is committed, and his team is committed, and we're pretty confident about keeping the government open. But again, the Democrats sometimes think they could just blame the party in power, but people saw yesterday who is doing the action, who is producing the results, and who is not.
Joining us now, Isaac Wright, partner at Forward Solutions Strategy Group and Democratic strategist. Rachel Campos Duffy is a Fox News contributor. Welcome to both of you. Isaac,
thank you. Merry Christmas.
Merry Christmas to you, Rachel. What do you think, Isaac, of what you just heard there from the president's advisor? She says Democrats are really out to blame people.
I think I really don't want to play poker with Kellyanne Conway if she's got that good of a poker face to spew that nonsense and not crack a smile. I mean, let's be honest. There are over 230 Republican votes in the U.S. House. It takes 217 to pass the continuing resolution to fund the government another month that they're talking about. Democrats don't have the votes to shut down the government, even if we wanted to. That's just complete nonsense, passing the buck and passing the blame from the party that has the power, that all they have to do is work it out amongst themselves to do it. It's unbelievable. You know, it's like putting lipstick on a pig. You can take it to the dance, but it's still just a piece of bacon.
We want to let our viewers know that right now House and Senate Republicans are gathering. They're going to be making a statement on this big legislative victory of theirs, the passage of the Tax Cuts and Jobs Act. President Trump is expected to sign it any day now, although that gets kind of tied up into the budget deal that we are discussing right now. So when they begin to speak, you see some of the leaders filing into the room. There's the House Speaker, Paul Ryan. When they begin to speak, we're going to take you there. All right, so Rachel, give us your assessment. This proposal now would keep the government open for basically 3 weeks till January 19th. Right. Some people say that's, we just keep putting Band-Aids on this problem, but is 3 weeks better than nothing?
Absolutely. Look, there's a lot of provisions in this bill. The GOP is willing to get behind all of these provisions, at least in the short term. There are three things that are important. One is funding the government through January 19th. The other is disaster relief for Florida, Texas, and Puerto Rico. And the third, and this is the sticking point, is funding for the military. So the House has said, yeah, we want to increase defense funding, and we want to fund it through the year, not through January 18th, but through the year.
Rachel, I'm sorry to cut you off, but Senator Tim Scott of South Carolina is speaking right now. He had a big hand in this tax bill. Let's listen in.
Objective: making sure the American people are heard, making sure that small businesses have an opportunity to grow. We have seen a tremendous victory through this process, and it is because of committed leaders behind me, entrusted with the confidence of their voters to bring forth a tremendous victory. I am thankful that we are led in the Senate by Leader McConnell, who's done a fabulous job of bringing 52 cats, all working in different directions, together for one purpose: to serve the American people.
Well, thanks, Tim. This is a happy day indeed for the American people. These middle-class tax cuts are resonating already. We've used examples of single parents making $41,000 a year who are getting a 73% reduction in their taxes. But it's not just on the individual side. I was pleased to see America's corporations standing up almost immediately and saying that employees are going to benefit from this great tax cut, led off by AT&T yesterday with a $1,000 Christmas bonus to 200,000 employees. Echoing after that, other corporations standing up and saying just exactly what people like Speaker Paul Ryan have been predicting for a long time. This is going to provide great opportunities for the employees of our country. So it's a great Christmas season. Happy to be here. And with that, the chairman of the Ways and Means Committee, a leader on this issue all along the way, Kevin Brady.
Leader, thank you again so much for your leadership and Speaker Ryan's as well. Now, you've seen this bill signed today. This final historic tax reform bill is one of the biggest highlights for many of us in our time in Congress and maybe even in our adult lives. One of the main reasons so many of us ran for Congress was to do exactly this: improve America's broken tax code and take away the pain it was having and causing on our country and on our economy. We all want to make it simpler, fair, flatter, rewarding hard work, making America competitive again, and leapfrogging America to the lead. That's exactly what we accomplished in this bill. This is an incredible day for the American people. We would have never got here but for the leadership of Paul Ryan, our Speaker, without the leadership of the Senate, Leader McConnell, Chairman Hatch, and others. But I do want to take a moment to tell you, as proud as I am of this bill, I am equally proud of the 24 members of the House Ways and Means Committee who worked long hours, evenings, weekends, came back from holidays to be ready to deliver this tax reform plan. And I'd be remiss as well if I didn't thank our team in our committee, led by David Stewart and Barbara Angus, our tax counsel, who just did remarkable work. I cannot wait to see this new life that springs up in our economy in the United States as we deliver more jobs, fair taxes, and bigger paychecks for the American people. Thank you. And I'm proud to introduce the chairman of the Energy Committee in the Senate, Senator Murkowski. There you are.
There you are.
I had to come from behind my Congressman for All Alaska, Don Young, who has been with us on the ANWR fight for 37 years now. So while I was able to be the architect of Title II in the Senate and proud to do so, I think it is only appropriate that I recognize the Dean of your House, Congressman Don Young, who has done an extraordinary job for us in opening up ANWR. But as tax reform has been long awaited, so has opening the 1002 area to limited exploration and production, an area of extraordinary resource that can be accessed with a minimal footprint, something that Alaskans have been fighting for 38 years. You don't give up on something when the cause is right, when you know you have so much to contribute. So to colleagues who have stood with us as the Alaska delegation, with those who have stood with Alaska, with those who have stood for American energy production, today is indeed a bright, bright day. We thank you for your continued support. Alaska will make you proud. Thank you.
Thank you. Well, this is a bright day for the United States because America is rejecting the economics of envy and embracing the economics of opportunity. And there's a real buoyancy to that, and there's a brightness to that. And I think America is longing for brightness in our public life. If you think about the impact of this vote, it has an impact on every American. And if you're having an impact on every American, that means you're having an impact on the globe. The world longs for the United States to be a strong diplomatic power. And in order for that to be true, the United States has to be a strong military power. And in order for that to be true, the United States has to be a strong economic power. At its foundation is the ability now to project American values around the world. This is much bigger than an economic picture. It is casting a vision for what our future looks like, and we're choosing brightness and opportunity.
Mike Isaac.
This is an exciting day for America and for almost every single person in it that works. I had a person, though, say, well, we're not going to know whether this tax helped us or not for another year, till April 15th of the following year. I said, no. Companies are going to get the new withholding tables by the 1st of February. And so the first checks to come out in February, people are going to be able to see the reduction in the amount of withholding they had to do to pay their taxes. They will see a benefit come February. And I've been overjoyed with calls this morning from small businesses and some international businesses. I worked on the international tax piece, and I've already heard from some companies that are going to move their business back to the United States, build a couple more manufacturing plants here, and hire. One of them was talking about 1,000 more employees. But I've heard from small business too. One who said, this is going to be the biggest investment we ever made. We're going to put 15 million, that's a big number to a small business, 15 million into new plants. I think we're going to hear a lot of examples of that. And of course, every new plant needs employees to do it. Employees increase the competition among workers. Increased competition among workers raises wages. So we're going to see lower taxes, higher wages, and more jobs in the United States, which is exactly what we set out to do in this bill. And I'm glad that the Budget Committee was able to play a role in this to get the reconciliation so that we could get through to the final stage and do it.
You know, I've told this story a couple of times before, but a while back I was grocery shopping on a weekend at about 11 o'clock at night, and a mom came up to me, and she had her hand full of coupons and her grocery cart full of generic food, and she said, Christy, when is it going to get better? She said, my electricity costs have gone up, healthcare costs have gone up. When is it going to get better? By passing this bill and signing it into law, it just got better for that individual, for that family. In my home state of South Dakota, the average household income is $54,000 per year. And they pay double the national average in energy costs just because of where we're located. For that family, right now, they have about an $830 tax liability. With the passing of this bill, now they will get a $730 refund. That's a $1,600 difference. And for that family, that's life-changing. That's a weekend they can spend with their kids. They can take a couple days off, put some money in a savings account. So as I came to the table as a Ways and Means member and a final negotiator on this package, I came to that table as a farmer, as a rancher, but most importantly, as a mom who wanted to see those families get some relief. So this is a wonderful day for us. Not only did we meet family needs, but we also gave tools to farmers and ranchers and small businesses across the country. Interest deductibility, expensing, a new small business low tax rate. Those are all things that are going to pay off and build strong families, but also a strong future for this country. You know, the bottom line is this, that people have worked hard for their money. It's about time that people in Washington, D.C. respect that and let them keep more of their money and make their lives and their futures better. So thank you, Chairman Brady, for your work on this bill. And what so impressed me throughout this process is that Chairman Brady let us be legislators. You know, I served in our state legislature. I was the assistant majority leader there. Since I've come to Washington, D.C., one of the things that frustrated me the most is that you see very little of the legislative process. But this chairman let us be legislators. He let us negotiate, craft policy, and I absolutely loved the fact that he gave us that opportunity to truly be a part of forming this bill so that it worked for our districts, our states, but for this country. And now I want to introduce the man who gave such an inspirational speech yesterday at the White House. I talked to so many people that said it almost brought them to tears, but Chairman Hatch will speak next.
What a privilege it is for me to stand here with these wonderful leaders in the House and the Senate. You know, I'm so proud of Paul Ryan and Mitch McConnell, and the chairman of the Ways and Means Committee and the other members, and the people on the Finance Committee. This was a landmark day, and I can say that if we can keep going, we'll get this country going like it's never been going before. I'm grateful to stand here with these great leaders. I'm grateful for the influence they've had, and I'm grateful for the influence they've had throughout the country. This is the greatest country in the world, bar none. We don't want it to slip, and it won't, as long as we have top leaders like this, and we have a Congress like this, where every member really cares, and they care for the right reasons. So God bless the United States of America. Thanks so much.
So many of us have been working on this issue for a long time. And as a former chairman of the Ways and Means Committee, I just have to tell you how so many men and women here have fought for this moment. So I also